Fusebox. Epiphanies, Part 2. You're rolling, man.
And I thank you, sir. And a gracious good day to all of you. Welcome to Fusebox, show number 6. This is the Twisted Epiphanies' second and final part. And I am your host, Marc Rose, and I am delighted that you took the time to push play. We are going to endeavor to wrap this up this time in terms of the Twisted Epiphanies subject in a nice, tidy little bowl. See what I did? Did you see? Did you?
Tidy bowl. Comic genius, man.
Yeah. Anyway, for those of you who may have missed the first part or don't know what in blue blazes I'm talking about, Twisted Epiphanies is a collection of spoken word pieces that have a slightly ironic tinge to them. And we have been experimenting with using audio enhancement to bring a new atmosphere, a new expression into just the purely spoken word type of thing. Yeah, some people call it poetry. It's probably creating a hybrid of its own. I'm not really sure what we call this anymore. It's become, well, kind of like this guy in the jar over here. Remember him? Yeah, well, I still got it. Alrighty. So we have been talking about for a couple of weeks, and I think I'm about pretty close to getting this thing set up, doing a little watering hole show where I have invited a few colleagues to sit around the table and just let it rip. We'll see what happens. No, it's not going to turn into one of those. And then they all got so drunk, no one could understand them.
Oh, that's so deep.
Yeah, it's not going to be that. But I think it's going to be fun. A very diverse group of people, and we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to doing that. And speaking of discussions, I had a terrific little messenger chat there with PQ Ripper, who hosts Quake Reversal Satellite and Overnightscape Central on this channel. He and I were sort of going back and forth about Tampa Bay radio. Surprisingly enough, I don't believe Mr. Ripper has ever lived in Florida. But, you know, it's no secret that I did for quite a while, and I've lovingly refer to it as the F place. But
are you sure about the lovingly part?
No, that's true. I do. Oh, come on. Well, yeah, all right, I know. Yeah, there are some critters there. I will give you that. There's some things growing in there. But the radio climate there for many years, particularly the time that PQ and I were discussing, which kind of early 80s and then crept into the 90s a little bit. This is specifically talk radio we were talking about. I still have friends there, a couple of them who are still working in AM radio there. Ted Webb and Jack Harris, who are morning guys at WFLA. But we were talking about the illustrious Bob Lassiter, who has since left our mortal coil here, but was one of the most interesting talk hosts probably ever. No question about it. And he definitely left a legacy. And luckily, a lot of his shows have survived one way or another. The air checks appear on YouTube, so you can find him. But what a fascinating guy. And I did not know him, but I knew someone who was chummy with him, and I think we passed in the halls once. But a fascinating guy. Yeah, just really interesting. So I found that both nostalgic that we were talking about past radio like that, and sort of informative. But it was a very interesting time, and I think radio in general has changed. I think we all know that. But that particular time was rather evocative. My friend Ted Webb, who is doing the AM thing now, had the good fortune to be on a radio station in the 70s and early 80s out there called WFSO, which is not that anymore. I don't know what it's called now. And it was 570 on the AM dial, and it was an AM music station that did what used to be referred to as alternative radio. It was album-oriented rock on AM. Kind of strange. But it was great. They had great hosts. Ted's got a rep. He was a great guy. So anyway, we didn't have the internet to compare what was going on around the country, but I think that was pretty unique for its time, but I found that really interesting to recollect there a little bit on Tampa Bay radio. PQ also mentioned that perhaps a clusterflux is in the offing, and I hope so. I'd be all over it. So anytime you are ready, sir, to do that, I am ready to do it. They are very fun programs, if you have heard them in the past. It's just sort of a roundtable discussion, although I think PQ was sort of suggesting that we'd have a little more structured idea here, and I'm all over that too. And since we are talking Twisted Epiphanies on this particular program, I just got word last week, actually earlier this week, that the Electronic Literature Conference has selected Twisted Epiphanies to exhibit at their conference in Bergen, Norway. That's just cool as hell. I'm sorry. That's just very cool. Now, that's going to mean a few things, and of course, I didn't do this on my own. I had the cooperation of John Barber and Travis Feldman, who are both connected to Washington State University over here in the Northwest, and they are connected to this electronic literature organization. It's an international organization, and I guess they have these conferences fairly frequently. I'm just learning about this myself, but they do invite people to bring work that is electronically oriented and somehow advances the method and techniques of communication. We're going to create a little exhibit that will involve a pay telephone, a little microchip device devised by Travis Feldman that allows a person to step up to this phone, dial a number, and at random within the infinite mind of this chip will spit out a twisted epiphany of some kind. This will be just fascinating for me to watch. I don't know how it's going to happen, but and whether I'm going or not, I don't know. That's up in the air. But even if I don't, the fact is this is a really cool thing, and I'm certainly flattered to have been included in this particular thing. And now, this particular thing.
It came without warning. It stayed without leaving. It took control and ravaged. A chest cold. So evil. It made one man's voice marketable.
Oh, yeah, he's the guy.
That guy. Then he does it too.
But for only 4 days.
What did he say?
4 days.
No, I don't.
Don't wait. Call Kevin Cooke to get a movie trailer voice in the next 4 days. In the voice business, sickness might just be your meal ticket. In Sickness and in Wealth starts Friday.
My good buddy Kevin Cooke had a bad cold. It was so bad, he actually couldn't do the job he was hired to do that day, so he went upstairs and cut that voice track anyway, because it was closer to what he really could do. And so once I heard that, I had to transform it into this. Yeah. Well, we're going to get Kevin on the show here soon as well. He's a fun guy and very bright, very creative, and I'm hoping we'll be able to collaborate on a few other things too. We did produce which you will hear at some other point, a new File 13, which That will be the first new File 13 in almost 10 years. It'll be great. So we'll get Kevin on the show here very soon.
File 13.
The first debates in human history were often shorter than those of today.
My opponent says that we should have a fire dance. Yet, how can we have a fire dance without meat?
We now have meat. Begin fire dance.
Okay, so the twistedness returns. And we're going to begin this. We have a lot of material to get to today, so I will keep this as brief as humanly possible so we can just get through it. One of the folks who have been writing for Twisted Epiphanies is Jodi Lorimer. Now, she's come into this rather recently, but Jodi is also a voice talent, and she's worked on many of our projects in the past. And she submitted a couple of things a while back that were a wee bit different. One of them has been played on this program a couple of episodes ago called Dark Energy. And she has a very unique style that kind of took it in a totally different way, and we'll get into that in this interview. But let me introduce you to Jodi Lorimer. So first of all, Jodi, thank you so much for taking time out of this maddening time that we're in, this stultifying kind of time.
Where we're wondering what we're going to do with all that time.
I know. I don't know what's going on right now, but I'm sure it's astrological. Why don't you introduce yourself? Maybe just tell a little bit about your background as we go into how you interface into this immaculate thing known as Twisted Epiphanies.
Well, as a voice talent, when I was a baby, my father was injured in a car accident, and he was blinded. Had some other things as well, but he never worked. He was disabled as a result. But there was nothing wrong with his sense of humor or his memory, and could quote Nietzsche chapter and verse, and taught me poker and, you know, the morale aspects of poker, the hold 'em and fold 'em thing.
Yeah.
For toothpicks. And and he had always loved to read. He had read everything. He was quite a student. Studied languages and history and Oswald Spengler and esoteric people like that. You know, at that time, this was in the 50s, there were, you know, the recorded books program was in existence, but it didn't have a lot of things that he was really interested in. It was mostly, you know, bodice rippers and trucker novels and things like that. And so, you know,
like
rodeo
it is today. No,
Zane Grey, rodeo stories, which was fine. But he kind of lost interest in it, didn't do it. So years go by, and then audiobooks come in, and I go, hey, Dad, you know, you got about 40 years of stuff to catch up on, so let's sign you up. So we got him signed up with the State Library, and they started sending stacks and stacks of stuff. We're going through this, you know, 2,000-page catalog, and I'm going, oh, you're going to love oh, you're going to, oh, you need to read this one. Oh, hey, this is good. And I thought, well, I can read. I can read books. I've been reading them to my children at night for a long time with all the little voices and stuff, you know, and skipping over the dull parts and whatever. So I decided I wanted to be a voice talent. They kept throwing me in front of a camera, and I didn't like it because I'd never felt comfortable doing that. And I kept coming back to voice work. So
Yeah.
that's where all this sort of came from.
I came out here to Portland in 1999, and I was astounded by the voice talent that was out here. Because, first of all, they didn't label themselves anything. They were like, no, we just like to play. Now, I didn't have this experience in where I came from. I'd spent a couple of decades in what I like to refer to as the F place. It's Florida. But so coming out here and being introduced to all this multitude of talent was an amazing thing. And
We keep trying to convince people in LA that that's the case, but
we had actually several mutual friends. Susan Zeitlin, who has been in several of our pieces that we've played on the podcast here, and Rita Parrish, and a bunch of Sam Mowry, who will also be a guest here. Yes, soon. I can't remember the first episode. I believe it was you and your daughter who actually read, and I wasn't there. I think you did it at home, but you both were involved in a spot that ended up in a Dry Smoke episode. It was for the Reaper's
Oh, I do kind of
fire
remember that.
restoration sale or something. I don't know what it was. I have to go back and find it. Well, maybe we'll find it. Maybe it's right here.
Come one, come all, to the Strinelli brothers.
Blowout sale.
Yes, every slant must have its day, so don't miss our big warehouse clearance. Giant diamond cufflinks, only slightly singed. Contraband firearms, very rare. And bits of this and bits of that. A wonderful picking ground of flotsam and jetsam that will be fun for the entire family.
Oh, Mommy, look at this big marble. I think that's a glass eye, honey. You better put it back where you found it. Oh, Mom, he's not gonna need it anymore.
Yes, this is a fire sale to end all fire sales. So come on down. Visit us at the Strinelli Brothers Pier number 777. Because there won't be a family liquidation like this ever again. At least for the Strinelli Brothers.
Reaper Enterprises makes no claim towards the totality of any item offered for sale, nor for original ownership, or claims against said items, either by the police or unharmed relatives. Purchase all items at your own risk.
That's, I think, one of the first times we had actually an opportunity to work together, and things sort of went
Downhill.
downhill always,
yes.
yeah, or in a spiral. Which leads me to this. You,
Well, I love the segue.
the segue's great. Can I have a drum roll? You and your husband both have experience within the anthropological, archaeological sort of community kind of thingy, right?
Well, he was a high school teacher for 30 years and has a degree in anthropology. And so do I. He's a master's, and mine is just a, BA. But yeah, we both have that fascination. His is more culturally focused. Mine is archaeologically, ancient history focused.
Right.
And linguistics, actually. So we do have places where we meet up and have fascinating arguments about the history of humanity.
Which is where they should be.
Well, I know. So yes, we do have that in common.
Yeah, and I know Michael has spent time with culture, so to speak,
Yeah,
for
well,
large stretches.
Well, I mean, in Portland, you don't. I mean, everyone goes, "Oh, Portland is so white," it's
Right.
just so white. But when you look, I mean, there are like 70-something languages spoken in Portland public schools,
Right.
from absolutely everywhere. Really obscure ones. There are some Indian languages from Mesoamerica that are really rare. They're like 500 people who speak this language, but the parents have come here to work in the fields in California, brought their kids up to Oregon, and so they speak these odd Quiche Maya languages and whatever. And his classroom has always been wide open, so he just invites people to, better to have the actual people come in and talk to students instead of saying read page 25 to 50 and write a story. So he has the people come in and tell them who they are and where they're from. And so he's had, Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans and politicians and Hmong shamans and African drummers and everybody in between.
You did write a book, which is where this all started.
I did?
You did. You
Yes,
did
I
write
did.
a book, and we will have a link to said volume in the show notes here. So can you give us the title of the book, by the way, so those who are looking for it, even though there will be a link in the show notes, can you tell us what the title is?
Dancing at the Edge of Death.
Cheery.
Yeah, it's a shamanic thing,
Yes.
So when you get to the edge, you can cross over and come back.
That's right.
See, it's not like you go over and that's it. It's the shamanic thing allows you to go there and return. And if you can actually do that, well, you come back much smarter than when you left.
Oh, no kidding.
Or you don't come back.
That's right, because if you make a picnic on that side of the fence,
Well,
well...
it's subtitled The Origins of the Labyrinth in the Paleolithic, so it goes back to cave art, using cave art in the Paleolithic caves of France and Spain, particularly as illustrations of how the labyrinth is a part of actually our internal wiring, our brain wiring.
It's quite a tome.
Weighty, yes. A variety of ways. It's expensive to ship, I've come to discover. I'll do thinner paper if I write another book. As I have gotten more involved in people who are interested in labyrinths, I tend to ask them, how did you get interested in labyrinths. And they all come from wildly different directions. All of them have, this moment of kind of, aha, this is a really cool thing. And none of them replicate one another. There isn't like, I was brought up in my church choir and, there's none of that. There's nothing organizational about it. In fact, the whole point of it is that it's totally tolerant, totally open. You make it what it is to you. And I had opened the paper one day and there was an article about these nice Episcopalian ladies walking a labyrinth on a Sunday as a meditative exercise. And I thought, well, that's bizarre because my interest in mythology, anthropologically speaking, it was that there was a cannibalistic critter at the center that would eat you. And I thought, well, that doesn't seem contemplative. What are these people doing? And I thought, how do those two ideas connect? Somewhere they have to connect, because then I begin to think, well, the stories I'd read and heard otherwise, that have used those mythic beginnings of Labyrinth and Minotaur, the bull-headed semi-human cannibal, those are linked, and they've been linked for thousands of years, inextricably. And Borges has written, about the labyrinth, a whole book of poems about the labyrinth, and and it shows up all the time. I saw it like twice in a week on 2 different TV shows, True Detectives and Da Vinci's Demons. And both of them had minotaurs with the double-bladed axe and this sort of labyrinthine thing that people were going through. I thought, well, that is amazing. This is from Minoan Crete, like 3000 BC, and it still has this amazing vitality as a connection of 2 symbols. So it's like, what ties them together? So that's kind of where I started just reading about it, and I'd let it go for a while, and it would sort of, yank me back.
Yeah.
And I read some more stuff and read some more stuff. So
I think a valuable point is that it's the only book that ships with an actual Minotaur, and I think that's really valuable. I know that's why I got it.
Don't open page 75.
That's right. He's up there right now.
Just waiting.
Eating some congressmen. But
We can only hope.
have no sense of direction. I approached you with this idea because I thought you probably have something percolating in there that might be worthy of perusing. And
that wild-eyed look about me.
Sure.
There must be a twisted epiphany in there somewhere.
Sure enough. And we, on the show before last, we played Dark Energy, which is really what started me thinking that we were going down a different path with your stuff, and we're gonna play another piece here in a minute that certainly exemplifies that. It was really interesting because your take on it certainly had the ironic involved, but it also unlocked a completely different avenue of exploration, whereas most of these have been tight-fitting little poems and spoken word prose even. This went into an exploratory area, a journey, a travel log, if you will, and that played really well as an exploration in a different color for us, the dark energy thing. And I've mentioned that it harkened back to the Power of 10, but what were you thinking?
What were you thinking?
What were you drinking when you were...
Actually, I was drinking tea and reading National Geographic. It was all very, very civilized, unlike other times. But I opened a page and I was reading this wonderful article, and I'll admit to having stolen some of the lines, but there was this wonderful picture of a recreation, a NASA, how they color things and change,
Yes.
so that you can actually see what's going on
Yes.
in outer space when most of the time you can't. It was a map of dark energy in our solar system that gravitationally pulled stars and planets together. But in between was all this dark space. And I thought, that looks like a brain scan. It looks like the pictures that you see when they wire you up with electrodes and, introduce, a drug or some kind of stimulus or something to see what fires, what part of your brain is functioning when this thing happens. Mm-hmm. And that's what it looked like was, neurons. And I thought, wow, that makes so much sense on some weird level, and I'm not sure what. So that's kind of where that started.
Yeah.
Check episode 4, The Fifth Wall, for that one. Enough said.
We actually tackled dark energy first, but La Paz, the clip we're going to play here in a moment, was really the defining moment for me. This really, I think there's some wonderful writing in this, and my job in this was basically to stay out of the way of some of that language because there's so much you could do with it. But the thing you want to do with it is support the word and support the message that's in this. So this was an actual trip you took.
It was. I didn't really make anything up. It was a long time ago. So, on some level, memory fails, I suppose, in the details. But otherwise, no, it's very clear in my mind because it was such a weird day.
Yeah.
We were coming out and we'd spent hours driving through all this gorgeous country along the Sea of Cortez and, down Baja. My boyfriend at the time had bought a new Toyota and they had just paved the Baja 1000 raceway, and so he, not a raceway, but it's like, the car thing that they do. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway. He wanted to make that. She said, let's drive the Baja 1000. I go, well, whatever that is, okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it at 190 miles an hour.
We did. So we got in the Toyota and we took off. And we're going through this spectacular desert with, these enormous cactus and things and just it was very dramatic landscape and hot and sunny. I mean, you'd stop at any little stand and get something to drink and, keep you going. Then we were going down toward the ocean and we went over the top of the mountains and down and boom, we were under this layer of gray fog and the radio died.
Nice.
And, there goes the cantina music and the, all that stuff just went away. And there was sort of this pulse on the radio until it went away completely, and so we just instantly had this feeling of having sort of dropped through a doorway into some other reality. And it was Guero Negro, which now is like the whale visiting capital of Baja, because that's where they come to mate and, bear their young and all that stuff. And so they have all these whaling tours and all that stuff. I haven't been there since that day, except when we came back through it and went, let's just really step on it. Let's not stop.
Exactly.
But I understand they have an airstrip and they have these hotels and, they have a tourist trade and all this stuff. But at the time, it was just an outpost. It was a weird outpost.
It's funny. It sounds a lot like when I was describing this to someone else the other day, that there's elements of Clive Barker merged with touch of evil. I mean, there's this amazing feel that is in the description here, and why don't we listen to that right now?
We dropped out of the sunny Mexican mountains and down through a gray flannel sky. The radio speeding us along with whooping cantina music, coughed, drifted, pulsed, fainted, and died. Gigantic silent cacti slid by in the gloom. We drove in silence into a dismal little coastal town to find dinner. In the distance, the ocean was indistinguishable from the slate fog, folding in on itself. The restaurant sign flickered up ahead. A neonic distress signal in the lowering dark. Inside it was sparse. A few tables, a few locals, simultaneously lifted their heads to sullenly watch the gringos enter and sit at a grit-covered table. There was a fine, sandpapery feel to everything. But the beer wasn't warm. At a nearby table, well, they were all nearby, sat a woman who looked like she didn't belong in this dump, as if she had been marooned there by a passing fairy tale, a brief squall of myth, that dropped her like a jewel in a hurried robbery. She had lustrous black hair to her waist and enormous liquid eyes. She had about her the tragic air of poetry, enveloped in voluptuous deep secrets, the weight of an Indian heritage woven on a loom of stone and blood. Next to her was a small suitcase and a teddy bear. But where was the child? 2 young men, barely men, in their teens, came to her, one kneeling at her feet as if she were the Madonna, speaking softly and earnestly. Her eyes drank him in, his words, his concern. She was leaving, that was clear, but there were negotiations going on. The young men came and went, couriers of information, gently reaching for her small hand. Our meal came and we were just hungry enough to eat it, despite the grit, despite the seasoning of suspicion and resentfulness that hung in the room like a dull headache. We put our money in the damp hand of an enormously fat woman, perched on a stool that was lost in her fleshy folds. She had one eye white as an egg that spun lazily in its socket. The other observed us like a carrion bird. We escaped to the heavy air outside and unlocked the car. There she was, under the sickly failing neon, with her little suitcase and teddy bear and no child. She had put on dark lipstick. She smiled, her Indian face suddenly seductive, chin lowered, her hip kicked out, her tiny high heels cocked, teddy bear in her arms. She said, "You going to Ensenada?" We said no. La Paz. Sorry. And drove away.
So yeah, La Paz, not the snapshot of that particular point in history, not going to be high on my visiting list, but
I don't think you could do it.
Yeah.
It was definitely a time warp.
Yeah, it's probably considerably changed, I would imagine, by now. It's just the way it goes, I guess. So the goal, with a lot of this material is to package it up in some form, and we've chatted a bit about how to accomplish that, but leaning towards this sort of ebook kind of thing where we might have more interactive capacity and certainly graphics and all that to kind of accompany this wonderful stuff.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, fun. And I know you've got a couple of others brewing in there. We have one.
No pressure.
We have one that's sitting on I'm got to figure out how to do this correctly. It is called George, right?
Actually, it's called Have You Seen Jesus?
Have You Seen Jesus?
But George is the main player.
No,
yeah.
Have You Seen Jesus is much better. Because Have You Seen George is just really bland and banal.
Probably somebody's seen a George at one time or another. It's not the same George.
No. And that also was based on an actual...
Yes, I'll have to admit, I personally wasn't there. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister, and this was one of my older brothers who, at one point, just unreeled this story that was so hilarious and so bizarre. And, of course, I had to put myself there so I could actually tell it. But other than that... it's his version. So if he made any of it up, I can't be responsible for that. But I don't think so, because I grew up with these people.
Yes.
If you knew the person he thinks he is, you'd have to admit he's one very special guy.
So that right there is the dulcet tones of Jeff Pollard. And that little piece was called Usion, written by Laurence Overmire. And again, that's right up there with probably some of the shortest ever. Very funny. Speaking of Jeff, we're returning to a discussion that we actually had a while ago, and it fit very nicely into this program, so I'm going to unleash it here. Because Jeff wrote one of the pieces we're going to hear shortly as well, and it's called John the Heathen. And, well, I'll let him explain that. So one of the other things that Jeff has been involved in here, and we are going to play a sample of that in a bit here, what someone might call poetry even. Yeah, I know that's going to scare a lot of people, but it's not.
I think you just lost the rest of the audience.
I think what I'm hearing right now is a door slamming. Can we hear the door slamming?
We need another word for poetry.
Yeah, we do, don't we?
Just not to frighten people away.
I know, it's crazy. But it's spoken word, and Jeff wrote a piece. Now, I'm trying to remember, did this come before or after? Because we have this side project called the Regulators, which is in an embryonic form at the moment as we try to bring band members together. But I can't remember, did you write this before that or I don't remember.
Which piece?
John the Heathen.
John the Heathen. Oh, that was actually written for the Regulators. Does everybody know what the Regulators
No, perhaps
are?
you could tell them.
Okay, the Regulators. Yeah, the Regulators, since Mark mentioned it, that's a band that you and I are starting that came about in another interesting way that these things, how they typically come about, almost by accident, where Mark one day, as we were imbibing and lamenting and grousing and you decided you wanted to, get back to playing your own music. Mark's a really talented musician and does a lot of stuff for, your clients. And a few nights later, I'm laying in bed. And when you're a creative, you typically either have trouble getting to sleep or staying asleep because our minds go 100 miles an hour in 100 different directions. And this particular night, which is not unusual for me, a song lyric was looping in my head, and I couldn't get it out of my head because I couldn't identify the song, I couldn't identify the artist. And then it occurred to me, oh my God, I'm making this up. And then the second thought right behind that was, hey, that's not too bad.
That's right.
So I got up and I wrote it down, went back to bed, thought I had it out of my system, and then here comes the second lyric. Also not bad. So I got up and I wrote it down. Now it's out of my system. I go to sleep. I wake up the next day. I check out the lyrics. Hey, they still don't suck. And I sat down. I finished the song. And over the next 2 days, I wrote 3 more songs. And then eventually, I was brave enough to share them with Mark. He loved the lyrics. One thing led to another, and Mark made the decision, hey, we need to start a band. So we've done that. The Regulators, I've written 24 songs, I think now. You're starting to flesh these things out musically. We're looking for some more members of the band. And the idea is that eventually we want to play out. We want to play live. And John the Heathen, as I circle back.
Excellent.
Yeah. See what I did there?
That's right.
John the Heathen was written for the Regulators. It was going to be more of a spoken word piece than an actual song, but for the Regulators, but it fit with what we were doing with Twisted Epiphanies.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Extending oily greeting.
Meet John the Heathen.
Expression of no feeling.
But dank, twisted meaning. fingertips teasing.
Cold blood, rage seething. Blade thrust for no reason.
Proving life, thus fleeting. Inflicted mental treason. Black memories receding. Murky surf revealing. Mutilated bones bleaching. He sends the brain reeling. This John, the Heathen.
So one of the inspirations, of course, for the Twisted Epiphanies project was this book called The One Idea That Saves the World, written by Laurence Overmire. And I'd like to continue with an interview that we started on the last program with Nancy and Laurence and kind of wrap it up. Many of these pieces that you're hearing in this particular program are also in the audio book version of The One Idea That Saves the World, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
With all this negative stuff that's happening in the world, I kept grappling with, how do we right this ship? And I asked myself, is there one idea that can bring us all together despite our differences to do what is necessary and right to save ourselves and the planet? And I think there is an idea, and it's a very, very old idea, and that's what this book is about. And it's so simple. It's an idea that is part of every major religion, and it is acknowledged by atheists and agnostics as well, because within this idea, you can find the moral center of the universe, the ethical guideline for living, whether you believe in a God or not. So you might say it's the place where science and religion intersect and truly find compatibility. And moreover, I think that I would submit that living this idea, making it a part of our everyday consciousness, is the fundamental shift that we as a species must make. There can be no real change without it. Without it, ultimately, we're going to destroy all that is best about ourselves and our beautiful planet.
We see it happening all the time. So what is it?
Well, the idea, as I said, is very simple. The idea is, are you ready? We are one. That's it. That's the one idea. And, it's an idea that's been expressed over and over and over again by artists, poets, musicians, scientists, philosophers, and every great spiritual teacher. But even though we've heard it many times before, we have refused to really grasp what it means and what it requires of all of us. Everything is interconnected, and it's what Martin Luther King called the interrelated structure of reality. Mm-hmm. And if you suffer, I suffer. If I suffer, you suffer. If you look at any ecosystem, the interconnection is so intricate. If you lose one creature, there's a domino effect.
That's right.
With every other creature. And our whole planet is like that. And when you go up another step of consciousness, you discover that the whole universe is like that. Everything is interconnected. And so the real task that we have, we're living in a really kind of a dark age. We're just beginning to understand the interconnections. And we really have to be looking for how does what I do affect other people, and how does it affect the planet?
Exactly.
And then if we have a conscience, if we have integrity, then we're going to take steps to rectify any wrongs that we're knowingly or unknowingly committing. And that's the way to heal the world. If enough of us are acting in a positive way, we're really going to have a positive impact. But right now, we're on a very dark path right now. We're going down the wrong road.
Well, and that's the challenge. That's the difficulty, because this isn't lightweight, oh, let's all smile at the flowers stuff. This is saying we must act now. The subtitle of that book is A Call to Conscience and a Call to Action. We can't sit back and say, well, continue the dumbing down of the American populace, continue the sense of we've got all the time in the world to fix these problems. We don't. We have a finite planet that has major problems. And now people are starting to see it, and people are starting to take action. And that's why this book for me is a way to just sort of say, get the most basic thought. He does a thing in the book called Earth Consciousness, and I love it because so many people now, it's the rage to just be sarcastic and cynical, and it's fun and it's funny, but it sometimes doesn't help. What sometimes helps is saying, just get your consciousness into what needs to be done. And a lot of the problem is people are like, well, changing a light bulb isn't, going to save the planet. But it will, because you change that light bulb, all of a sudden you're thinking about it. And then all of a sudden you say, well, I better start to recycle. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about that. And then all of a sudden you're contacting your congressperson saying, I don't want fracking in my town. And it gets bigger and bigger. And then it's the global consciousness.
And
it matters.
That's true. And, I also want to just stress here that this isn't a book about pointing out problems and going, see, we're all sick, we're going to die. It's not that. It's like, here are some very definite, concrete steps every single person could take to rectify that situation, one little drop at a time, and it makes a big difference. And
the thing that I love too is he's included a massive amount of wisdom from other teachers that have gone before us, and we can see they're from all walks of life, all countries, all times and place and politics, and wisdom is wisdom, and truth is truth, and it's a very simple idea because at its foundation, we all know it. We already know it.
That's right.
And it's important to emphasize that what we do when we act is we inspire other people. And then there's a ripple effect. And that's part of the interconnectedness, that when you take a positive action, it ripples throughout the universe and it becomes something huge. Now, we as an individual will never know what our little action did. And that's the paradox, that it's going to feel frustrating. Yeah. It's going to feel like we're not doing anything here. Nothing's happening. But the truth is, it is happening. And you have to trust that you just put out positive action after positive action after positive action, and it's going to have a ripple effect. And that's something that we tend to lose sight of, and we need to hang on to.
Yeah.
Well, also what I love that you're doing, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier today, is that with this show, even, and with this wonderful guy that Frank, God love you. It's like you've challenged the voices that say you can do this, and you're saying, no, I'd like to do it this way. We need artists to be out there at the forefront. The artists are the ones who can be. I mean, Larry's work is filled with wit and sort of pointed things that make people go, ouch, because that's what we need right now. We don't need voices saying, just be calm. We need those too, because we need to be calm sometimes. But we need people to shake people up. That's the role of the artist too.
All of this is really, it's a pursuit to seek and try to understand the truth, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And that it's an important pursuit. And when you stop voices from expressing themselves, you're losing links that might lead you to something important that we need to understand. So we need to, as rational people, as reasonable people, which we would hope that we would be, of course, a lot of us aren't, but, reasonable, rational people ought to be able to discuss any idea and take a look at it and analyze it and, accept or reject it. But we don't have enough rational people leading us, for sure.
Right.
And there aren't enough rational voices in our public discourse, and we desperately need them.
Big fish,
small pond. The corporation got so big, swallowing little corporation after little corporation. It finally swallowed itself. The destruction was so vast, so completely global, it was impossible to figure out who to blame.
The television executive hangs by a string from a corporate digit, fiddling with the twiddle of his thumb, fantasizing of half-clad dollar bills spread provocatively on the sofa, so conveniently placed in the center of the room. His finger snaps, his secretary barks. Dogs come running out of the woodwork, panting and licking, ready to fetch his slippers and light his cigar. Yes, life is a pool in the Hollywood Hills, with starlets to twinkle their charms, intending the dangling needs of the silver-spooned ego. The sip of a julep is oh so sweet when sucked through the nectar of adulation. But alas, his time is short. The balding butler, with just a hint of the smirk, serves him a cell phone on a silver platter. Holding the perilous instrument gingerly to his ear, our TV boy is scolded by a box of laundry detergent, who tells him that Nielsen doesn't like his numbers, and he's being banished to a subsidiary existence in New Jersey.
I'm plugged in, wigged out, logged on, to the wall, brain wired, through windows of inner cyberspace, telemarketed on airwaves of high-tech, no resolution, toastered in a microwaved oven, ears popped corn-wise, my electric eyes spinning sockets, juiced like a jingled julep, sucked through the jargon of video laser loser lips, played for a lackey by big no-name hucksters who think I have no will of my own. But if I pull the plug now, will self and soul reboot or just be deleted?
So what we heard there was Big Fish, Small Pond, read by Eric Newsome. The TV Executive, read by Julia Guthrie. And Techno Man, read by yours truly. And as we wrap things up here, I want to just shove a couple of more in here. This one, called Report from X-Star 10, was a piece also written by Laurence Overmire, and comes from a book by the same name, and is read by Lev Liberman.
It was a strange planet we landed on. A contradiction of nature, serene and turbulent, profane yet divine. Beings of all size and form inhabited magical terrain, open sky and waterfall, deep jungle, arid plain. But even though their eyes, deep set in rather large heads, appeared to be open, in sad, unfortunate fact, none could see. In blind trance, they set about destroying, using, manipulating, until what had been beautiful once became irrevocably ugly. Even so, incredible as it may seem, they could not see the ugliness either, instead building great monuments in praise of what they deemed an extraordinary conquest of dirt and stone.
Good guys and bad guys. Who wears the black hat and who the white? Is evil so easy to recognize? Can you see inside the shadow of a man's eyes who he really is? Is one man's enemy another man's hero? We fight with such conviction these comic book villains who don't really exist. Perhaps by looking in instead of out, we'd find the very thing we hate, and making peace with that incorrigible demon, set ourselves free. The longed-for hope of humanity, realized in an instant of unqualified reflection.
Always start with a big batch of dollars. Pour it into the tube quickly, no need to worry about spilling. Speed is of the essence. Time is money. Now spoon in a generous helping of sex. Hunks and babes with very white teeth and appropriately big body parts. Add 2 cups innuendo, 4 to 5 tablespoons of witless sarcasm, and a scoop or 2 of old stale jokes. You can get these on sale by the bushel at any local convenience store. Mix well with impossible circumstances, completely devoid of intellect, with no discernible link to reality. Turn up the heat to high. Whip in some popular music, some très chic clothing, a couple of silly parents.
What are you?
The dotty neighbor, and a dog or other cute animal who does tricks. As the pablum begins to boil into a bubbly froth, fold in a boisterous laugh track, making sure to cover any and all portions of the material that are in no way funny or clever. Note, for the typical soufflé, several gallons of laugh track may be required. Pop your sitcom into the oven, bake for at least 15 minutes of fame. When you begin to smell the profits, remove carefully and allow the sponsors and network censors to taste the product, removing any extraneous relevance. Voila! That's all there is to it. Serve your masterpiece to the American public with an appropriate disclaimer, assuming no responsibility for undesirable side effects related to the consumption of your product.
A cooking show to end all cooking shows. Absolutely. Sitcom Soufflé was the name of that last piece, read by Nancy Monson. And right before that was Good Guys, Bad Guys, read by Eric Newsome. All of these written by Laurence Overmire. So I think that's going to do it for this particular edition of this particular show. And again, I hope you enjoyed this. It's a different take on the spoken word thing, and I'm sorry you can't stop us. We're going to do more. So thanks so much for pushing play on this. Next week, I don't really know what we're doing. If something falls out of the sky and we do a waterhole show, then that's what it'll be. But in any case, it'll be something, I guarantee you that. And I certainly, once again, appreciate you taking the time to listen to this concoction of audio entertainment. So, until our next cartoon.